We are live. Here we are on Lincoln Square StreamYard. We are live today. I'm Rick Wilson, your host, as in many cases. I'm joined today by Andrew Wilson, one of the most brilliant young political analysts in the country right now.
Good morning.
Who I'm not biased in any way whatsoever because he is of my flesh and blood.
That's okay. But, you're allowed to be biased.
It's good to have you on the show today, Andrew. Welcome to Lincoln Square. I know you've got some writing coming up on the platform as well.
I do.
Andrew's a big part of the Lincoln Project and Lincoln Democracy Institute family, who studies a lot of voter behavior, who studies what people are doing out there and what they're thinking, and tries to get ahead of the political curve and tries to get us a competitive advantage against this gigantic machine that MAGA has.
Sure.
Because as much as it's convenient for a lot of people to think that the MAGA-verse are, the slack-jawed yokels, there's also a lot of really smart statisticians and data analysts and political researchers and pollsters and everybody else around that pool that are studying the crowd, that are studying what moves voters. And Andrew does that on the side of good and order. So Andrew, welcome to the show. I wanted to start out by talking to you about something you and I talked about this morning, that this whole package of things that's happening in the country and the world right now, with the trade war, with Trump's ratings collapsing, that the GOP's chances in 2026 have taken a real nosedive in the last, really in the last 10 days.
Well, let's actually start with 2025. Actually, I would want to talk about 2025 first.
Okay. Yes.
We have these two past House races that we just had in that Wisconsin race in for the Supreme Court. And there's a somewhat uniform shift of 11 points towards Democrats, which is a great sign. I think it's a reason to be hopeful. But another thing, I think is important for people to remember, that typically in a given non-election year, we have about 9 special elections for the U.S. House. There are those 2 that we've already had, and then the Texas and Arizona seats that are coming up. So we can maybe expect 5 more. Unless we're in an anomalous year and we don't get as many. And those vacancies open up all the time.
Sure.
Deaths, retirements.
People run for Senate, people run for governor.
So we will have more metrics on how well Democrats will perform this year. And there's a tiny, tiny chance that Democrats could even take the House this year. It's vanishingly small. I'm going to be totally honest with you, but there are good signs and real hopeful opportunities in the future just this year. But in 2026, I think Republicans are extremely vulnerable in a lot of states, especially states like Virginia. I think you'll see the biggest wipeout in Virginia. I think so. We're looking at Virginia 1 and 2. Virginia 2 is Jen Kiggins' seat. And Accomack County in Virginia, it's on the coast there. It's on a little peninsula. That is a county that something like 21% of the jobs in that county could be affected by tariffs. And Virginia on the whole has something like 160,000 jobs that are going to be impacted by the tariffs. That's 45% of those jobs, those people who hold those jobs voted for Trump. So, and on top of that, there's also 200,000 plus federal workers in Virginia. And remember, Glenn Youngkin won by about 60,000 votes. So if you're looking at these pools of people who are vulnerable to these cuts, it's a major opportunity for Democrats and a serious vulnerability for Winsome Sears, who's running for governor against Spanberger in Virginia.
So when you look at the impact of Doge cuts, the 200,000 plus that so far, Virginia's taking this right in the chin. Now Youngkin doesn't care. He's a short timer now. And he's basically said like, oh, well, they can get other jobs. They can go work in retail. They can go work in manufacturing plants, which is, funny joke, Glenn, Mr. Private Equity. I think Sears, if we end up making Elon Musk her running mate, is going to have a very high hill to climb.
Well, she's in an extremely tight position. It's either she rejects the sitting president, who's only a few miles away from her, or she chooses to fight for Virginians, which I don't anticipate happening. And the whole head fake with Elon leaving and, he's not going to be a part of Doge. I don't believe that for a second. I mean, they've been lying from the start about his involvement with Doge. They lied to the courts about it. They're lying to us, and he'll never take his fingers off the controls.
No.
And Earl Sears has a it would be like an anchor around her ankle.
Yeah, I think in a lot of ways, I mean, look, those top 7 counties, the 7 counties in Northern Virginia, what about 60% of the vote, something like that?
Yeah, I think so.
If you add that damage up there with Doge, and you add the damage of the tariff impacts in Southwest Virginia ag, and the tariff impacts in the Norfolk area and the Hampton Roads area, I think you've got a kind of perfect storm brewing up in Virginia. And I mean, have you modeled much about? I mean, I think we've talked about, you modeled the 2 House races and the governor's race. Are you looking at the legislative side as well for impact there?
There will be a broad impact. I think there's probably 10 really competitive seats, and Democrats have opportunities to pick up a sizable number of those. And those are a little more esoteric than I know necessarily about Virginia,
right.
But we're going to dig into those and figure those out. But a lot of this, in 2021, Youngkin rode a lot of national cultural issues into the executive mansion, and that's going to be just as potent in Virginia.
When American troops perish in the line.
Oh, there we go.
I don't know. That wasn't me.
I don't know what that is.
One of our ads, but it wasn't me.
If we use that same rubric of national cultural issues are going to be red hot in Virginia, I think that all these seats are up for grabs.
Duty. The remains are treated with the great.
Really, it's not me. I swear to you.
It's not me either.
It's probably on the production side somewhere, but it's no big deal. It's a great ad. But yeah, I mean, I think Virginia will really be a laboratory because it's such a really actually purple state.
Yeah.
You've got that educated, more affluent Northern Virginia. You've got working class coastal Virginia, and you've got rural agricultural, more red Southwest Virginia, where, I mean, Roanoke is about as conservative as you get.
Historical quirks about Virginia. Think about this: since 1977, whenever a new president is elected, the state of Virginia elects a governor of the opposite party. So that was true with Ralph Northman and Glenn Youngkin. And I suspect we will not break the trend after 50 plus years or almost 50 years of.
I also think, I'm going to get your opinion on this. I think Spanberger's kind of a glove fit for Virginia. She's not a progressive edge case. She's got a military background, a national service background. I think she's a good fit.
You're seeing this in other races across the spectrum here with Democrats, as they're picking up the sort of Slotkin model. And I don't want to cliche it too much, but she does have an opportunity in places like Virginia Beach and Norfolk to really play up her background in national security.
Yeah, absolutely.
And if we want to talk about New York for a second,
I do always want to talk about New York.
Mike Lawler, if he doesn't run for governor, is going to face Kate Conley, I think, who's also got a serious national security background. I think she did the same job as Alyssa Slotkin at one point.
It's very similar. Yeah.
So, I think that would be a huge boon for Democrats to be running people who seriously understand national security and that sort of thing. And it's always been a vulnerability. It's been a vulnerability since Carter, that, Democrats are the weak on foreign policy party, but that's less and less true. I mean, it's been less and less true since 2015. So yeah, I think that's a hopeful sign for Democrats across the country.
Well, I think that's right. And I think that is good candidate selection for them. And with Trump's approval ratings cratering right now, and folks, even Rasmussen, which basically might as well be an in-house poll for Trump, has him upside down by 4 points as of today. That's shocking to me. And I've rarely seen, I don't know about you, Andrew, but I've rarely seen as precipitous a drop across every major polling outlet for a president ever. I
don't know that there's a strong historical comparison or some touchstone we can discuss, but it's in a lot of ways, it's not surprising he did blow himself up. I mean,
Sure.
there's no reality in which you can fire hundreds of thousands of workers in any sector
Mm-mm.
and not create chaos and economic damage across
Right.
the board. I mean, it doesn't take millions of jobs lost. It takes 100,000. That's
Sure.
it, to crash economies of certain cities, which will crash regional economies and state economies, and it sort of trickles down from there. He did it to himself.
Oh, look, I think every bit of this is self-inflicted. The trade war is self-inflicted. And I want to talk a little bit about that because you've been doing some national modeling about, and I know we're only in the early stages of it, but I think folks would like to see behind that curtain a little bit. You've started to look at how these trade war impacts are going to break in different states and how the job losses are going to sort of pile up. And there's going to be we haven't even gotten close to the beginning of the political impact of how the trade war is going to reshuffle the political map. Talk to us a little bit about where you see that going.
Well, I mean, it's fairly apparent that most of the jobs that are going to be affected by tariffs are held by Trump voters.
Mm-hmm.
And when they lose their jobs, they get their paychecks cut, they're going to turn on him. I don't see it. We do recognize that there's a part of the Republican Party that is fully committed and will never break away from Trump. There's another part of the Republican Party that doesn't like Democrats. They just don't think they're authentic, or
generically, yeah.
It's the coastal elite problem, which is real. But those people, when they see their paychecks sort of vanishing into thin air, it's going to tell them that this policy failed.
Right.
And it's also not just the people whose jobs are affected by tariffs. It's the restaurants they go to. It's the gas stations where they fill up. It's the stores where they buy clothes for their kids. And those people are going to lose money too. So it just balloons when,
right.
I mean, breaking free trade is fundamentally a terrible idea. You will break the economy.
Right.
And you will also, just historically, we come from a tradition of British politics and free trade politics.
Sure.
You will not win a contest between the American people and free trade.
At the end of the day,
it's not possible. You will either create a black market where smuggling runs wild, and
which is crazy in the year 2025.
You lose control over maritime commerce, or you just blow up the whole economy and force people to lose their jobs. The states that are most affected, and I think one of the reasons why we saw Democrats perform so well in the Wisconsin Supreme Court race, Wisconsin is the #1 state in the nation for these jobs that are affected by tariffs.
Right.
I would not be surprised in the slightest if in 2026 and 2028 you see Democrats rack up major victories in Wisconsin.
I think that's exactly right. I mean, look, on pre-trade war, we could have taken back the House with New York, California, and a handful of other seats across the country.
Sure.
And that was when people were modeling, as we were, 20 to 25 seats that were going to be in play. I think that, and you and I have talked where this number is from realistic to ambitious. I think between 25 and 40 seats are now in play, even overcoming a lot of the gerrymandering because of what you identified, that 11-point-something% swing toward the Democrats generically. I don't think it gets any better for Republicans in the next 6 months.
And a month ago, I was in the early parts of the spring, we saw a lot of these Democrats retiring and
sure,
saying they're not going to run for re-election.
Mm-hmm.
But now you're seeing the mirror effect. John James just decided he's going to run for governor and drop that Michigan 10.
That's his 15th run for something statewide.
I would say that puts Michigan 10 in the lean D category.
Absolutely.
Chris Sununu as well decided that he's not going to run for re-election. So I think there's another one, and you'll see what seats are most vulnerable based on the fundraising from Republicans, and we'll be tracking that.
Yeah.
If we see that Republicans aren't fundraising for these seats, like Pennsylvania 10, Pennsylvania 7, Colorado 8, we will have an indication. It certainly looks like Republicans are acting like they think there's going to be a blue wave.
Yeah, I think that's right. And I think, you mentioned this earlier, especially in the swing districts, every single Republican is in a trap. Because if Mike Lawler or Nick LaLota in New York goes out and says, oh yeah, I disagree with Trump and Musk on closing Social Security offices, and Doge is wrong to cut VA benefits, and this trade war is hurting our people, the backlash of MAGA voters is going to eat them alive. And if they do that,
they can't sustain the loss.
Go ahead.
They can't sustain the loss of that portion of MAGA voters that make up the Republican Party.
Correct.
If, we've talked about the Bannon line for years and years, but if Republicans, congressional Republicans, lose MAGA voters, and those MAGA voters are not going to vote for Democrats.
No, they'll stay home
or vote for
right.
some, or there
vote
could be primaries. I don't know what will happen,
right.
But they're not gonna switch sides, but they're not going to vote for the Republicans. And I think that, like what you saw in Wisconsin, Democrats way overshot what they were anticipating to get in terms of turnout. Republicans performed right on target.
Mm-hmm.
And we haven't seen the impacts of the trade war yet, really.
Right.
So if in March, Republicans are performing right on target, then by November of next year, when the impacts of the trade war are here and apparent and everyone is feeling them, I don't expect that it will be Democrats blowing past their margins and Republicans vastly underperforming.
Right. Yeah, I think a lot of stay-home effect is more likely, and a lot of Democrats are like, how can we convert them? I'm like, why are you trying? Don't try. Let them stay home, because that drumbeat that's out there that I think is the most pernicious thing that for Trump right now is not Republicans overtly criticizing him, but it's saying, I didn't vote for this. I didn't vote for this. You did. But I think that's more corrosive in some ways than a direct attack on Trump.
It also, what it is, it's despair. They've wiped out the hope of the Trump golden age. He's done it himself, of course. There was not going to be a golden age from tariff money. It's
never going to happen.
Fantasy. And when voters feel despair, that's one of the things that will keep them from voting the most, that will keep them away from a certain candidate. If there's, we talk about hope versus fear a lot in our research. And what they fear now is this going on further. Trump talked about tariffs, and there were a lot of people, especially on Wall Street, who said it's a bluff, it's a negotiating tactic. Of course, that wasn't true. There was apparently no way to convince them otherwise. But those illusions are shattering. They're going away. And we'll see if, they come up with a new, fantasy about,
what new culture war issue.
You joke, but I'm not. I wouldn't be.
Oh no, I'm actually not joking. I mean that is their secret sauce in 2024. People, the economy was a big overlay, but they understood. They targeted voters on the right with the trans issue in particular. They spent $300 and some million selling it. They're going to have to find another one. And I suspect it'll be immigration related. I don't know that answer for sure yet, but that still has a cut for them. That still works.
It does still have a cut. In some ways, it is true that Trump's policies have halted migration at the border.
Sure.
That has created a situation in which Congress didn't do anything.
No.
Congress had no part in controlling immigration at the border. So they can't exactly campaign on it, but they're going to lie through their teeth and said they did. But by, brutally solving this problem, they've created a new problem for themselves. You can't run on a problem that you have, punished out of existence. And they will try to, expand those margins with Hispanic voters that they got in 2024. They might be successful, especially with Hispanic men. But I do think that the multi-generational Hispanic households and Hispanic households that speak Spanish at home, you might see them either stay home or move towards these more moderate Democrats that we talked about earlier.
Yeah. I don't know if you've done any work on this yet. We haven't talked about it, but I've talked to a couple of people in South Florida who are like, I don't think they understand that the Venezuelan origin citizens in Doral and places like that, and the Cubans in Hialeah who are seeing Venezuelans and Cubans who are here legally under TPF or TPS and in other programs being deported, that Republicans have figured that the damage that's going to do yet. And he described it to me as they will stay home. They're not going to vote Democratic. They hate Democrats. They think they're all socialists, but they're pissed and they don't understand what's happening. I wonder if some of that, and I haven't I never shook through the Hispanic numbers enough to know, like, in the national picture, my understanding was a lot of those were second gen Mexican families who are essentially now in that second to last phase of Americanization.
Sure.
But I think in Florida, you may end up upsetting some seats like Salazar. You may end up upsetting some seats that in the reddest of red states right now, they're not thinking are vulnerable yet.
Right. Yeah. I mean, there will be upsets in 2026 that we're not talking about right now.
Right.
And you saw the Republican House target list for their races in 2026, and
It's
you
a
go
head
through
fake.
those. A lot of those are a head fake, but some of them I think might be, they're serious about, and they are districts with a lot of Hispanic voters. So I anticipate that will be one of their major tracks next year.
I think that's right. I think they're going to be a lot of folks who are going to be shocked that the African American and Hispanic voters, mostly men, that came across to the Republicans, that they rented them, they didn't buy them, that they got them in a short-term issue. And real talk, as I've talked to a number of African American leaders and a number of Hispanic leaders who told me they weren't going to vote for a woman. If it had been a generic Democrat of any other kind and it was a male, that patriarchal thing in those two cultures, it's a real thing. It's not. Right. It's not fake. It's a real thing.
Right. And a lot of this comes down to voting based on your strongly held beliefs. And your strongly held beliefs are relatively unchangeable.
Sure.
They really only change when your economic outlook is affected. If you start to feel pain in your wallet is when you are starting to reconsider what you did in the past. So and Florida is not one of those places that has massive tariff impacts, but the politics of immigration here are going to be sort of the major mover in 2026.
I think that's right. And I also think that the third rail of Social Security is about to make people like Anna Paulina Luna in the Tampa Bay area, who represents almost the largest percentage of voters who are on Social Security and Medicare in the country, in that district, that shutting those offices down, making them no longer, reachable by phone, all that stuff, that is adding up to a de facto cut. And it's going to be hard to explain away for those older voters. I mean, the Villages, folks, both a red hot area of STDs, but also a red hot area of Republican politics. The Villages is suddenly seeing this upsurge in Democratic activism, because those were people who did not vote for this.
No,
they love Trump. They're generic Republicans. They're MAGA in some ways, but they're shocked right now how fucked they're going to be from the trade war and the end of government benefits that they expected to live on.
Trump promised them that he wouldn't cut those programs.
He did twice,
and he lies about everything. This is the thing that, like, Democrats failed to convince people that he lied about everything.
Yep.
And he doesn't care if Republicans in the House lose their seats.
No,
He really doesn't. The
No.
Congress is sort of immaterial to Trump. He clearly doesn't want it or need it. And the reason that he, hasn't done what he's done through legislation is, one, he's a weak president, and two, it serves to undermine Congress.
Right.
So, they cut Social Security, Trump doesn't care.
No.
They cut Medicare, Trump has, it's whatever. I mean,
here are his fucks, zero.
None.
None at all. Andrew, we got a couple audience questions. Let's run through those. Will this sort of thing result in a further monopolization by large corporations like Walmart and Amazon, as they'll be the only ones able to afford these tariffs and mass produce? They will pass these tariffs on.
They will pass these tariffs on
take a cut in their world. They will pass these tariffs on at scale. That's my view.
They will do that. They will pass these tariffs on. Our economy will become more top heavy on these, magnificent seven companies who, have a protected market. They're essentially royal charters.
Yep.
They become, our economy is going to be more and more unstable. It's a slightly larger drop in NVIDIA stock right now could send the whole economy down the toilet. Yep. The monopoly economy that we have isn't what, Republicans for a long time, they're the party of Reagan.
Right.
Well, Reaganism is about strong competition and
absolutely
risky competition.
Mm-hmm.
There is no risky competition with the Magnificent Seven or Walmart and Amazon.
Nope.
They are closing out competitors. They are shutting down small businesses.
Mm-hmm.
We have a monopoly economy. And
it's regulatory and market capture, and look, there's an argument that they will just pass these costs on to consumers because they can.
They can and will.
I mean, they can. Okay. The other question is, what about boycotts for tourism? I don't know if you're talking about foreign countries, you're already seeing it. There's a reason that the Senate right now is very quietly working up a $112 billion relief package for farmers, the airlines, and the auto industry, because all three of those are being hit right in the teeth. People are not flying to America because this is now a hostile country.
Right. And it's like I said earlier, with these jobs and communities that have, big manufacturing bases, it's not just the factory workers that are hurting. It's, where they buy their goods. With these tourism boycotts, which you'll see not just internationally, but, somebody who lives in New York isn't going to go down to, Dallas or Houston to travel and
for vacation.
Texas. They're not going to go and tour the places that tourists, normally would see, because not only are the states hostile, but the whole country has become, sort of an armed camp. But the tourism boycotts, I don't know if those will be as, because I think they might already be kind of baked in since 2016. A lot of people who are worried about coming to the U.S. are not coming. The real inflow problem that we're going to have is migrant labor,
which everybody's desperate for it. And if you guys,
cost of agricultural products is just going to skyrocket here in a minute. I mean, it's going to be crazy.
Your great uncle Lindsay, who runs the citrus part of the world that we have to do with in the family, you can't get labor. They can't get labor. They can't get, legal, illegal, especially they can't get Anglos.
Right.
They, this idea that's been floated by the Trump folks that, Americans are going to be in factories screwing in little screws into iPhones. Get the fuck out of here.
They certainly won't be doing that under the lacking worker protections. That's just not going to happen for Americans.
So, well, listen, folks, it's been the half hour. As always, we enjoy being with you. Andrew, thank you for coming on the show today. Look for Andrew's Substack, folks, andrewwilson.substack.com. He writes a piece about once a week. And he's also going to be doing some stuff here on Lincoln Square. And everybody, you can find me at my various 1,070,000 things I do every week. Check us out at the lincolnproject.us. Check out my podcast, The Enemies List. Check out my Lincoln Project podcast. We've got some great economic folks in the next few shows to explain what's going on in the insanity of this moment. My Substack is therickwilson.substack.com. Unsurprisingly enough, and on all the social media platforms. All right, folks, thank you so much for coming on. And Andrew, thanks again. We'll see you soon.
Sure. See you guys.